Hey FlossTube, welcome back. This is my 107th FlossTube video, and I'm excited to share with you what I've been working on. But first of all, I want to welcome you. If you are new to my channel, welcome. I hope that you enjoy the things that I have to share with you. And if you are returning, thank you for coming back and watching my videos. I really appreciate it. I have a lot to share with you. I'm really excited to share these things with you because it has been a good month stitch-wise, and I've got some really cool stuff to show you. Everything is going well. We've had a good month. Work is really busy, but that's a good thing, right? So anyway, before we get to what I've been working on, I just want to respond to some questions and comments that have been left on my channel since the last time I filmed. So first of all, D. Stitcher asked me about whatever happened to my Haid. And if you've been watching my videos about, I think it's been about 2 years since I worked on that, 2 or 3 years. I was working on a Heaven and Earth design. It was an adaptation of a painting by Randall Spangler called Autumn Magic. It's a picture of a big Victorian house. And I'd worked on that for several years, and I think I'm about 20% through it. That's about how much I had finished. And I just got tired of working on it. Part of the reason why is I didn't really like working full coverage over one. And that really kind of got to me. And the second thing that happened, I was just barely reminded of this. If you watch Amy's videos, she is the globe-trotting stitcher. She mentioned me and mentioned this in her latest video. And I'd kind of forgotten this, but as I was working on that, I was getting close to the place where there is a man who is standing on the steps of the house. And I'd kind of been looking forward to reaching that point because I felt like I was going to that was a significant amount of progress. And while I was stitching that, somebody else was also working on Autumn Magic in the same kind of area, and they stitched the man. And when I saw it, I was really kind of disappointed because looking close up, the man's face was just a blur. There were no prominent features in that face. Now, these computer adaptations of cross-stitch, they're meant to be seen from a distance. I understand that. And from a distance, it wouldn't really matter because you wouldn't be close enough to even need to see those details in the first place. But the things that I want to stitch, I want them to look good close up and far away. And so it was kind of discouraging to me to see that his face wasn't going to have any real definition. And that really kind of turned me off the piece. And that is the big reason why I stopped working on it, is I decided it wasn't worth my time because I wasn't going to be happy with the end result. Now that doesn't mean that I have completely abandoned full coverage. I am working on a full coverage piece right now. I've been working on another full coverage piece, or almost full coverage. I enjoy stitching full coverage pieces, but I want to stitch something that is going to look good up close and far away. And I think some computer-generated charts are not going to fit that criteria, especially if you've got little small figures in your design. And it makes sense. You just can't get enough resolution to make the conversion in order to get enough detail. Now, a computer-generated chart of a landscape, I think that's going to turn out okay. Or a chart of somebody's painting of a portrait, that should be fine too, because the person is the main subject of the design, and there's going to be enough detail in the resolution that you'll be able to see good features. But for little figures, there's just not enough resolution in It may even be in the digital conversion in the JPEG that they start with, where there's not enough resolution to pick up those details that would be in a real painting. And it was good for me to be reminded about that, because as I've been mostly backstitching, I've had a little bit of a bout of startitis, and I have been actually looking at starting a great big full coverage piece, or pulling out Autumn Magic again. And now that I remember that, that's not a possibility. So basically that's what's going on. What's happened to my hate is it's basically abandoned, and I don't have any plans to pick it up right now. Yeah. So anything that's computer generated that has little figures, I'm kind of wary of trying to stitch that. Lori asked me if I have a stand that I stitch with, and yes, I do, Lori. I use a table stand, and I use a stand that I made out of PVC. I had somebody else years ago. Somebody else on YouTube showed their stand, an idea for a stand, and I took that idea and adapted it to what would work for me. I have made a video showing my stand to some extent, and explaining how to build one if you want to build one. The link to that video is down in the comments below. So if you want to learn more about the stand I use, check out that video. Luann asked me about this picture that is behind me. And she asked if it was cross-stitch. Yes, this is cross-stitch. This is one of the first designs that I ever stitched. It's called Village Skaters, and it is a design by Stony Creek. I think it is still available. I cannot remember where, but I've seen it available as an electronic download somewhere. This is the design that made me want to learn how to cross stitch. So when I saw this design, I just fell in love with it and I wanted to stitch it. And it was the first big piece that I ever stitched. I learned a lot from that piece. It was kind of a pain to stitch, mostly because there's a lot of snow. There is a lot of white on white and on that piece, and that was a challenge for me. At the time, I didn't think about. I hadn't had enough experience, so I hadn't thought about the need to keep my hands clean. And I was also stitching in hand when I stitched this. And so I handled that a lot. And because of that, the white has become discolored. So if I were to stitch this over again, which is not likely, but if I were, I would definitely do things differently because of the things that I learned from that piece. It's a wonderful piece. If you can find it and stitch it, that'd be really cool. I haven't ever seen anybody else stitch it though. I have had, so the last time I recorded a video, I showed you my Dragon Quaker that I was working on. And I mentioned a kind of a problem that I ran into, that the dragon that I stitched, I ended up running out of a skein of floss and using a new skein. And there was just a little bit of a color difference between the two skeins of floss. And I asked you what you thought I should do with it. Serendipitously, the place where I ended up changing skeins kind of makes sense. It wasn't in the middle of stitching something, it was kind of in a new section of the dragon. And so it does look kind of like it was meant to be, or like it's okay. It's not, if it had happened like in the middle of stitching something, I'd probably be a little bit more eager to take it out. So I asked you what you thought I should do, and overwhelmingly, everyone said just leave it in. It looks fine. I'm not completely convinced of that yet, but somebody said just stitch everything else, and when you finish it, then you can decide. And I think that makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to leave it in for now, and when I finish the design, I'll make the decision as to what I'm going to do about that, whether I'm going to take it out or. I'm kind of worried. I'm kind of worried because I know I'm going to run out of other floss, other colors, and have to start a new skein, and I'm worried that the same thing's going to happen to me. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what it looks like when everything is finished. Okay. Leah Noel asked me, when I have a project that isn't full coverage, how do I calculate the number of stitches total in progress for my record keeping? Do I count each stitch that I make? So I'm an engineer, and because of that, I'm lazy. And because I'm lazy, I'm not going to spend a lot of time counting the number of stitches that I make. Basically, I do everything by 10 by 10 grids. And so when I finish a 10 by 10 grid, I just count 100 stitches, whether or not they are all stitched or not. Otherwise, I would have to, in order for all of my spreadsheets and my calculations to work out, I would have to go through and I would have to count all of the empty squares so that I would know exactly how many stitches there are, actual stitches there are in the design. And I'm not willing to do that. I'm lazy. And so to me, just counting 100 stitches every time I finish all of the stitches that are in a 10 by 10 grid are close enough for my purposes to tell me how, are close enough for my purposes for the calculations that I make. And that's good enough for me. So yeah, I just count 100 stitches when I finish a grid, a 10 by 10 square, if it's not full coverage. And it all works out. It basically works out. Sometimes if I'm in an area where there aren't a lot of stitches, then I complete a whole bunch of stitches all at once. And then there are other areas where I kind of slow down a little bit because there's more stitches to make in that area. But that's just what I do. Okay. So Stitch Addict asked me, she wants to start Medieval Town Mandala, which is one of the designs that I'm stitching. And she asked me if I thought that it would be okay to start in the corner rather than in the middle. Now, the mandalas that have been designed by Chatelaine, they're kind of, she suggests starting in the middle and working out. And I actually considered starting in the corner myself, but if you look at that design, the corner is like a kind of a lacy, leafy tree type thing. There's a lot of space between stitches. And I was worried that I would have a terrible time starting down there. First of all, deciding exactly where to start, and then stitching all of that to get to a place where it made sense. I just looked like it was going to be kind of a pain. I think you can start in the corner if you're willing to go through that, but I just decided I'm just going to start in the middle, just because I didn't want to deal with that motif that was down in the corner right then. So yeah, if you want to, I think you could probably start in the corner if you wanted to, but that was a decision that I decided I didn't want to make. And finally, Brooknook 2 asked me if it's possible with my spreadsheet to have it available on your phone or your iPad, but to actually enter data on the computer. And that is actually how I work. Generally, I enter my numbers in on the computer, but I have it stored. I have it stored in my OneDrive account so that it is available on my phone. And I have the Microsoft Office app on my phone so that if I ever need to look something up, just for curiosity's sake, it is there on my phone. So I just have to pull up my Office app. There's an Office app that I have installed on my phone. And with that Office app connected to my OneDrive, I have access to that spreadsheet wherever I am without having to be on the computer. It's kind of nice because I can look up something that's in my wish list and have that available for me right there. Or if I want to pull up my WIP status report, the graph, and look at it and kind of see how things are progressing, I can do it on my phone or my iPad. So that is definitely possible. If you are using Google Sheets also has an app that you can install on your phone as well, so you can do it that way as well. Okay, so thank you so much for your comments. I really appreciate that. Thank you for your questions. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to save the best for last. So I'm going to show you what I've been working on for the last couple of weeks. And the first thing that I'm going to show you is Sunshine and Shadows. This is a design by Graphs by Barbara and Cheryl. It's a picture of a yard on the side of the house with a tree. And I really like this piece because I love the way the light filters through this piece. It is actually an adaptation of a watercolor. I do not remember the name of the artist, but I think Barbara and Cheryl, they did a lot of adaptations of watercolor paintings by a specific artist. The painting the other piece that I've done of hers called A Perfect Setting, which is of a house, I think is done by I suspect is done by the same artist. Anyway, this is it. And I'll show you what it looked like the last time you saw it. And I am stitching this on 32 count Ivory Lugana with the called for colors, of course. And I was actually, I was a little bit reluctant to start this because I'd been doing full coverage for so long. I was like, I don't know if I'm up to doing full coverage. Maybe I need to do something different. But I really enjoyed stitching on this time and made a lot of good progress. So I'll show you what it looks like now. And basically I stitched about a diagonal and a half. So I started down in here and finished this diagonal, and then I stitched the next diagonal. And I'm really feeling driven right now to work on this piece because first of all, starting down here in this corner, as you can see, these colors through here are really drab. There's not a lot of excitement to them, but I am getting up into the more exciting parts of the design. You can see here, this is actually the fence that runs across the front of the yard. And you'll be able to, when I get to the top of the pickets of the fence, then you're going to be able to see the house a little bit better. This is house right here. This is fence, and you can kind of see between the slats of the fence, the house that is on the other side of the fence. And I'm looking forward to seeing that effect. I need to do 3 or 4 more diagonals before that starts to appear, but I really want to see that. So I really have been feeling pushed to make some good progress here. You can also see over here, I have hit the edge of the walkway, and this is the yard that is over here. It looks like it's not grass, it's actually dirt or clay or something, probably because of the shade from the tree, which the tree's a long ways off. We're not going to see the tree for a very long time. But I am really excited to see this. My walkway, I've just got like this much more of the walkway to stitch, and then there won't be all of these drab colors to work through anymore. So I'll give you a little bit closer look. Yeah, you can kind of see the slats, but I think when I get up here and can see the top of the slats, then it's going to make a lot more sense. But yeah, I really like how this is. I'm just really enjoying this piece. I had so much fun stitching this. So I got a long ways to go on this one. It's a big piece, but I am really close to finishing a page. This is a page right here, so I'm really close to finishing a page and being about halfway through 2 other pages. So yeah, this is Sunshine and Shadows by Graphs by Barbara and Cheryl. And then the piece that I have been working on this week, this has been really fun too. So I've been for reasons that will become obvious soon, I needed to choose a new focus piece. And I've got a new focus piece, and that is going to be this. This is Time and Season Sampler by Moira Blackburn. This is a sampler. It has a verse from Ecclesiastes on it, which is a well-known verse. There's even a song about it that was sung by the Birds, if you remember that. Anyway, and what can I say about this? This was a gift to me from my wife for our anniversary a couple of years ago. So I've been working on this it's been almost 2 years now since I started it, but I'm really enjoying it. So I'll show you what it looked like the last time you saw it. It really hasn't been that long since I last stitched on this piece, to be honest. I'm stitching on 40 count Mallow, which I really like. It's a little bit rough, so I'm stitching with 1 strand of DMC. If my strands are too long, it really kind of shreds my floss a little bit, but I need to remember to cut off shorter lengths in order to avoid that from happening. And I don't know that it's necessarily the fabric. I think it might be just that I'm stitching with 1 strand. Anyway, I think I mentioned last time I had a question about if I had seen any errors in this chart, and I mentioned the errors in the pomegranate border. There are errors all over the place. And when I say errors, basically they're repeating motifs that are missing stitches. And so I'm kind of treating that as kind of a suggestion, and I am making sure that all of my motifs look the same, because I think that looks correct. If you even look at the picture of the design on the front, they were stitched that way. But there's all sorts of I would call them errors. I would call them inconsistencies in the chart. Okay, so this is what it looks like now, and I made some really good progress with this week. I'm really happy with what I was able to stitch. So I brought this border up to here. The corner is not too far away. It's like going to be right up here, and I stitched the rest of this oak leaf and acorn border. This is the end of the oak leaf and acorn border, and then I started coming across and stitching these motifs over here. So I stitched all of these motifs that are over here on this side. About the only thing I have to stitch to get up to this level here are the words, which I'll do later. So I need to bring this center section up to the end, and then work on the same. They aren't exactly the same motifs, but the motifs that are over on this side. Bring this border up, and then I'll be able to work across the top to finish this. It doesn't feel like I have all that much left to stitch on it, actually. my spreadsheet is saying maybe 3.5 weeks of stitching left. So this should be going really quickly, and I should have a finish sooner rather than later. But yeah, I'm really enjoying how this is turning out. There's some. I really like I still love the colors. There's quite a combination there, and I just really like how they're looking. And I like the way this looks now that it's complete. So yeah, this is Time and Season Sampler by Moira Blackburn. And it has been a real treat to work on this week. Okay. So there's that. Okay. I said I was saving the best for last. And I have a finish. I am so happy to have this finished. So you've been watching me. Everybody knows I've been stitching a mid-Amish life. This was a design that was published in 1987 in 3 issues of Cross Stitch and Country Crafts. And I have been working on this it's been almost 3 years. 3 years total, about 150 days of stitching. So 150 is like 5 months, 6 months. About 150 days of stitching and 21 days of backstitch. That's how long it took me to do all the backstitch in this piece, which for these big pieces that have a lot of backstitch, I looked back through my records. 21 days, it seems like a magic number. That's what it takes. So I'll show you what it looks like finished. So this is it. And I'm just really happy with how it turned out. It looks really cool. The back stitching has really made a difference. It has brought everything into focus and helped make sense of places where there were like just blobs of color. They now make sense. I'll give you a little bit closer view of things so that you can see things a little bit better. This is 3 designs stitched as one piece. You can stitch them separately, but I am stitching them as one piece. I had somebody ask me if I had any problems doing that. And no, I didn't. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But this is tending the garden, so the garden with the barn in the background. And I just love the barn. I love how the barn turned out after it was backstitched. I think I even like it better than the house. And then the center section is from the buggy over to the middle of the house. Is visiting the neighbors. That includes the horse. And then the final section is hanging the quilts. So a couple of things to keep in mind. What I noticed is with them all stitched together, there were kind of some problems along, when I did the back stitch, there were some problems along the interface between each of these pieces. Mostly in the inconsistencies in backstitch. Like there was a row of backstitch over here along the top of the house in one of the designs, but not in the other. And so I finished that row across where it was like that. So I had stuff like that where it was almost like they did the 2 designs separately and didn't consider how to connect everything up as far as the backstitch goes between the 2 designs. Another thing to keep in mind when I first saw this is right here. The picket fence takes a little jog, and that is at the border between the 2 designs. That is right there. That's where the border is. And at first I thought that maybe there was a mistake because the picket fence didn't line up. But the picket fence isn't straight all the way across. It jogs up every once in a while all the way across. And so I decided that basically there was a jog that just coincidentally happened to be at the interface between the two designs. You might decide, if you are stitching this, you may not like the way this looks, and you may decide to kind of fudge things or adjust the picket fence a little bit to change the way that happens. But I was fine with that. Another thing to keep in mind is that you can't stitch, if you're going to stitch them together, you can't stitch this border as it is in the design. What you have to do is you have to take the center design and continue the pattern out to the edge rather than stitch the way that it is the way that it is shown. And I think that the instructions to the design say something like that. They say stitch the border, if you're going to stitch it together, stitch the border last and then bring it out across. I stitched the border with the design, and basically what I did is I just looked at where it was in the center, and then I just figured out where to start based on that. You know, you could take some graph paper and chart it out if you wanted to, or something like that, if you can't think it through. So yeah, but the back stitch has made all the difference, especially like this field looks a lot better with these little hay stacks or sheaves or whatever they are. They now make sense. The barn makes a lot more sense. The clouds, the back stitch made the clouds look puffy. And it's really, really interesting to me. It always amazes me how much difference backstitch does, even if it's really subtle. I mean, like, you can't tell that the clouds are backstitched unless you look really close at them. But like I say, they look puffier now than they did before. And of course here, the quilts don't look like they're floating in air. There's a clothesline. So they look like they're on the clothesline now. So yeah, this is a mid-Amish life, and I am just really happy with how it turned out. And I am glad that it is finished. It's my first finish in a year, so that feels really good. So what are my plans? I've already told you that I have a new focus piece. That focus piece is Time and Season Sampler. And I plan on stitching that every other week. And on the alternating weeks, I am going to stitch through the rest of the projects in my rotation. I had been saying that I was going to stitch 2 projects in a week, but I am at the point of my rotation where I have large projects, and I just don't feel like I can shortchange them. They need to have work done on them so that they will eventually get finished. So that is my plan, is I'm going to alternate my focus piece with another piece until I get to the end of my rotation. And then I have a couple of ideas of what I'm going to do going forward. And I'll talk about that later when we get to that point. I'm still working through possibilities. However, I think that by the time I get to the end of my rotation, I will have finished Time and Season Sampler and will have possibly chosen another focus piece. Okay? So what that means is I just barely finished stitching Time and Season Sampler, which means I'm going to go to the next project in my rotation. And what is that? That piece is English Cottage Sampler. This is a design by Teresa Wentzler. This was my birthday start. It's been about 1.5 years ago. That's when I started this on my birthday. This is a design that I have had ever since I started cross-stitching, and I'm finally getting around to actually stitching it. So I'm really excited to stitch this. When I was working on this before, I don't know, it was right in the middle of the time when I was swamped at work, and I was not in a very good place as far as cross-stitching goes. So it didn't get a lot of work, and I was really kind of discouraged with it. And this is 32 count flax linen, Flax Belfast Linen, and of course I'm stitching with the DMC. I was working on this border right here. This is really repetitive and really monotonous, and I had a hard time with it. And so I'm looking forward to stitching on this again, because I think I can finish this, finish the numbers, and then hopefully bring the border up to the same point that it is over here. And I'm hoping to do at least that much. I'm excited to work in here because things are going to change. We've got swans to stitch, and it'll feel good to get up into this area rather than being stuck down here with the numbers. So yeah, this is what it looks like now. We'll see what it looks like in another week. There is a guy on Instagram. His name is Doug. His Instagram name is Doug Free. I think there's numbers at the end. I don't remember exactly. I'll put it down here in the captions. He started this after I started mine, and he has stitched the entire top half. He's put me to shame. But that's the problem that I have with having so many whips. I haven't made as much progress on this as I would have liked because I have so many whips. So I'm hoping to figure out how to remedy that a little bit, because I want to get up into here. This middle section will actually go pretty quickly. It's an alphabet and the letters are big and there's lots of space in here. So this center section I think will go pretty quickly until I get up to the cottage at the top. So yeah, so this is English Cottage Sampler by Teresa Wentzler. There's a rule, if you haven't heard. The rule is you have to be working on a Teresa Wentzler sampler at all times. So this is my Teresa Wentzler piece at all times. So this is my Teresa Wentzler piece for now. And I have other ones that are sitting in the wings waiting to be started when this one's finished. So I need to get this one finished so that I can stitch another one of hers. So anyway, that's what I'm going to be working on this week, and then of course the week after I'll be working on Time and Season Sampler again, and we'll just work through the end of my rotation. Okay, so just to kind of wrap things up, I'll show you my whip status graph, and right now this is what it looks like. It's looking pretty good to me. There is one less whip here than there was before, which is because I had a finish. and you can see that Time and Season Sampler, I've passed the halfway mark with that, and of course it shows me that I need like I haven't looked at it closely, but it's like 25 days left to stitch on that. So that's just over 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks. So that is looking like it'll be a finish really soon, which I'm excited about. I have come to the realization that I need to have finishes, which is why I need to finish. I need to get my whip count down so I can have more finishes. Anyway, also, I had a viewer contact me a couple of weeks ago, and she asked me if I would be willing to do a giveaway for her. She has the original 3 issues of Cross Stitch and Country Crafts that has a Mid-Amish life in them. And she said And she said, I would like to have you offer them up in a giveaway. Otherwise, I'm going to get rid of them. And so I'm more than happy to make this design available to anybody who wants it. So let's do a giveaway. I'll show you the picture she sent me a picture to show you what they look like. And they look like they're in good condition. So we will do a giveaway. Let's use the keyword finish. And so if you want to participate, in the comments below, comment with the word finish in your comments somewhere. Maybe you can talk about what your last finish was, something that you hope to finish, what your favorite finish was, anything along those lines, but use the word finish and you will be entered into the giveaway, which we will announce a winner in my next video. So I'm really excited to do that. I would love to have anybody who wants this design have the opportunity to have it and stitch it. I know that there are a lot of people who are looking for it, and I wish I could give all of you a copy of the design so that you could stitch it, but this is one way to make it available to somebody else. So feel free to comment with that below. As always, if you want to see my daily progress, see how I do with English Cottage Sampler and get closer to the finish on Time and Season Sampler, you can follow me on Instagram. I am at blitstitch on Instagram, and you can follow me there to see my daily progress. I always enjoy hearing from you and would be glad to answer any questions that you have in the comments below. If you haven't, feel free to subscribe to my video. That will make it so that it will be easier to find me if I ever post another video. And you can also ring the bell so that you get notifications when I post a new video. As always, feel free to like this video. That is also a great help. As always, I hope that you have a great month, and we will talk to you later. Goodbye.